In Ukraine, there is increasing talk that Russia is preparing a new offensive against Kyiv from the territory of Belarus, especially against the backdrop of increasingly aggressive military exercises in Belarus, including nuclear ones. Lukashenko himself, the Belarusian dictator, stated that Belarus could enter the war against Ukraine, but only in one case, if aggression is committed against the republic. And in this episode, we will analyze whether there are actually any signs that Russia is preparing a new offensive against Kyiv or northern Ukraine from Belarus. Or is this just another information and psychological operation? My name is Alexei Peci. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel Peci News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, recently, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, unexpectedly made a working trip to the city of Slavutych in northern Ukraine, where he held a meeting with the leaders of the communities of Kyiv and Chernihiv regions. The main topic of discussion was strengthening the defense of the northern regions bordering Belarus, expanding defensive structures, and reinforcing the state border in the directions of Chernihiv and Kyiv. According to the president, the additional strengthening of the border concerns both fortification and other defensive structures, as well as the defense and security units deployed in these areas. Next, I will quote Zelensky: "We have the capability to strengthen, and we also have the capability to act preventively regarding Russian territories. There may be a threat from there, and the actual leadership of Belarus should stay alert. That is, to really feel that there will be consequences if there are aggressive actions against Ukraine, against our states. We remember that in 2022 the offensive also came from the territory of Belarus. We will not forget this. The Ukrainian defense forces, security forces, and our intelligence know what threats exist and how to respond justly and unconditionally. But it's important to note that Zelensky's trip and the strengthening of the border are taking place against the backdrop of large-scale security measures. The Security Service of Ukraine, together with the defense forces, has begun carrying out comprehensive measures in the northern regions. The Anti-Terrorist Center of the Security Service of Ukraine is coordinating the work. In addition to security service personnel, units of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the National Police, the National Guard, and the State Border Service are also taking part in the operation. The measures include proactive counterintelligence and counter-sabotage protection in 5 regions: Chernihiv, Kyiv, Zhytomyr, Volyn, and Rivne. Special groups are working to prevent enemy forces from infiltrating border areas, to stop sabotage, terrorist acts, subversive or reconnaissance activities, and other war crimes. In addition, the intensification of defensive and security actions in the north is related to the assessment of the enemy's plans. On May 19th, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that Russia has plans to mobilize another 100,000 people, and there are also 5 possible scenarios for an offensive from the north. Taking this into account, the leadership of Ukraine decided to immediately strengthen military forces along the Chernihiv-Kyiv axis, as well as to prepare additional comprehensive measures in the security and diplomatic spheres regarding Belarus. And here, as they say, Lukashenko is adding fuel to the fire and says, the leadership of Belarus may enter the war against Ukraine, but only in one case, if the republic is attacked. At the same time, he added that Minsk does not intend to get involved in the war because, as he put it, there is no need for it, neither civilian nor military. Lukashenko also expressed his readiness to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky at any point in Ukraine or Belarus to discuss the problems of bilateral relations and prospects. But let me emphasize right away, what's the point of talking to a Kremlin puppet who doesn't make any decisions on his own? What does Lukashenko decide in Belarus? Nothing. Everything there has long been decided by Putin, the Kremlin, and Lukashenko is just a little dog who does whatever Moscow tells him to do. What's the point of negotiating with him? And who does this self-proclaimed president of Belarus even think he is, saying, I'm ready to talk to Zelensky? Who's even willing to talk to you? And right now, it's important to understand that, against the backdrop of statements about a possible threat from the north, Ukraine's military and political leadership is monitoring several signs that could indicate Russia is preparing for potential offensive actions in the Chernihiv and Kyiv directions. But I'll note right away that at the moment activity in this area and the level of threat remain low. Meanwhile, attention is focused on several factors. The first sign that Russia is clearly preparing for something there is the number of troops near Ukraine's northern borders. On the Belarusian side, there are still 4 battalions of the Belarusian army stationed there, which is about 2,000 soldiers who are constantly being rotated. There is not yet a sufficient number of Russian forces for an offensive either from Belarus or from the Bryansk region of the Russian Federation. At the same time, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, previously stated that the Kremlin is preparing new mobilization measures to recruit another 100,000 soldiers. That's it. And this new mobilization could be in addition to the 409,000 soldiers that Russia plans to recruit under contract this year. And it is these additional 100,000 mobilized troops that the Kremlin may use for an operation on Ukraine's northern borders if the corresponding decision is made. The second factor mentioned is the development of infrastructure in southern Belarus. There, logistics routes are being expanded and training grounds and bases are being set up, which can be used by barbaric Russian troops within the so-called Union State. The third sign, which has not yet been observed, is the intensification of reconnaissance and sabotage activity by Belarus and the Russian Federation in the direction of a possible strike. And it's important to remember that back in mid-April, President Zelensky stated that Russia was trying to drag Belarus into the war. Notably, road construction toward Ukraine and artillery installations were seen in the border areas. In early May, Zelensky spoke about specific activity in certain sections of the border. Last week, Zelensky released information about additional contacts between Russia and Alexander Lukashenko. Next, I will quote Zelensky. Ukraine has details of the conversation between Russia and Belarus. Ukraine will certainly defend itself and its people if Alexander Lukashenko makes a mistake and decides to support this Russian plan as well. In addition, on May 19th, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, confirmed the reality of the threats. According to him, this means that Moscow is considering plans for operations to the south and north of Belarusian territory, that is, against the Chernihiv-Kyiv axis in Ukraine or against one of the NATO countries. At the High Command meeting, the President stated that Russia is preparing 5 scenarios for an offensive from the north, particularly on the Chernihiv-Kyiv axis. Defense forces are ordered to reinforce this area and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to boost diplomatic efforts. Meanwhile, Belarus, together with Russia, is conducting a nuclear exercise which the Kremlin has called a signal to NATO. Lukashenko, let me remind you, visited a missile brigade the day before and stated that the dream of having Russian Iskander systems in Belarus has come true. But let me emphasize right away, at this stage it's important to make one thing clear. There have been no open provocations or attempts to breach the border from the Belarusian side recently. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.